What actually separates motherboard brands from each other besides logos and RGB? What are their biggest strengths? And their most common weaknesses? And which motherboards might genuinely surprise you? ASUS. ASUS is probably the easiest brand to recognize because their lineup is everywhere, from cheap office PCs to absurdly expensive overclocking builds. The confusing part is that the differences between their series are bigger than most people realize. Prime is the entry point for a lot of normal gaming and productivity builds, usually cleaner looking, less aggressive RGB, and focused more on practical connectivity than flashy extras. The trade-off is that lower-end Prime boards sometimes cut back on things like rear USB ports or VRM cooling compared to similarly priced MSI or Gigabyte boards. TUF Gaming sits right in the middle, and honestly became one of ASUS's strongest product lines because it focuses on the stuff people actually notice in daily use. Better VRM cooling, reinforced PCI slots, decent memory support, solid BIOS features. A lot of TUF boards ended up becoming the safe recommendation for Ryzen 7 or Core Ultra 7 builds because they handle high-end CPUs without forcing you into ROG pricing. You're usually losing luxury extras, not gaming performance. ROG is where ASUS splits into multiple enthusiast tiers. Strix boards target high-end gaming systems with stronger VRMs, more M2 slots, heavier heat sinks, better onboard audio, and usually more aggressive aesthetics. Crosshair for AMD and Maximus for Intel move into serious enthusiast territory. The kind of boards people buy for custom water cooling, heavy overclocking, and squeezing every last bit of performance out of their hardware. ASUS BIOS is still one of the biggest reasons enthusiasts stay loyal to the brand. Fan controls, memory tuning, recovery tools. It's generally one of the easiest BIOS environments to work in, especially for beginners learning undervolting or expo tuning for the first time. Outside the main gaming stack, ASUS also has some more specialized lines. ProArt targets creators with things like Thunderbolt, fast networking, and cleaner aesthetics for editing or workstation builds. ASUS also has a separate workstation series that sits outside the usual gaming-focused lineup. These boards are built more for stability, heavy multi-GPU setups, massive storage configurations, and professional workloads like 3D rendering, AI acceleration, or virtualization. The criticism? ASUS sometimes charges very aggressive premiums once you move into upper ROG territory. And because expectations are so high, backlash gets loud when problems happen, like the AM5 voltage controversy during early Ryzen 7000 launches. People paying flagship prices expect flagship reliability. MSI. MSI's reputation improved massively over the last several CPU generations because they stopped focusing only on aesthetics and started getting genuinely competitive in thermals and VRM quality. Their lineup is easier to understand once you know the naming. Pro boards focus on stability and practical connectivity for office, creator, or mixed-use systems. Usually simpler aesthetics, fewer RGB features, but often surprisingly decent hardware underneath. MAG is where MSI starts targeting mainstream gamers. This is where you see stronger VRM cooling, reinforced GPU slots, better memory support, larger heat sinks, and more gaming-focused rear I/O. Tomahawk became especially popular because it consistently avoided one major problem: weak mid-range VRMs pretending to be high-end through marketing. Even relatively affordable Tomahawk boards started handling Ryzen 9 and Core i9 CPUs far better than people expected. MPG pushes further into premium territory with heavier RGB integration, upgraded audio, more USB connectivity, and cleaner PCB layouts aimed at showcase builds. Then, MEG sits at the top with enthusiast-focused features like extreme power delivery, advanced debug tools, and overclocking-focused BIOS options. At that point, motherboard pricing starts entering small gaming laptop territory. One thing MSI generally does well is DDR5 compatibility and memory training stability. Memory training is basically the motherboard and CPU figuring out stable RAM timings during boot. Early AM5 systems across the industry sometimes took so long to boot that people thought the PC froze. MSI boards gained a decent reputation for handling that process more smoothly over time. Their BIOS layouts also tend to be beginner-friendly, maybe not the prettiest, but straightforward. That matters more than people realize once you're troubleshooting expo instability, adjusting fan curves, or trying your first undervolt. The downside is that MSI sometimes plays things a little too safely. Designs can feel repetitive between generations, and lower-end models occasionally sacrifice rear USB connectivity more aggressively than competitors. Their software ecosystem also still has mixed reactions. Mystic Light works perfectly for some people. For others, it becomes the first thing they uninstall. Gigabyte. Gigabyte built a strong reputation by focusing aggressively on hardware value. Their boards often pack oversized heatsinks, strong VRMs, and lots of physical reinforcement at prices that undercut comparable ASUS models. Their stack is fairly broad. UD boards focus on budget systems with stripped-back aesthetics and essential features only. Gaming series boards add stronger cooling, better audio, and more gamer-oriented rear I/O. AORUS Elite and Pro are where most mainstream gaming builds land because they balance VRM quality, storage options, and pricing pretty well. AORUS Master and Extreme are aimed at enthusiasts. Bigger heatsinks, premium networking, advanced troubleshooting tools, and enough cooling hardware that these boards are noticeably heavier than entry-level models. Gigabyte also became known for thermal performance. A lot of their AM5 and Z-series boards run surprisingly cool under sustained workloads. That matters for people sitting in Blender, Unreal Engine, Premiere Pro, or long compilation workloads for hours at a time. Stable VRM temperatures matter more there than one extra RGB strip. They were also one of the first brands aggressively pushing oversized VRM cooling, even on mid-range boards. Years ago, people mocked giant heatsinks as marketing. Then CPUs started pulling over 200 watts, and suddenly those heatsinks stopped looking so unnecessary. But Gigabyte still carries a reputation for inconsistent BIOS polish depending on the generation. Their hardware quality is often excellent for the money, while the software side historically felt less refined than ASUS or MSI. They've improved a lot, but older builders still remember BIOS menus that occasionally felt confusing during troubleshooting or memory tuning. Another complaint you still see sometimes is software reliability. Gigabyte Control Center improved compared to older utilities, but their software ecosystem still doesn't inspire the same confidence as their hardware. ASRock. ASRock originally started as a lower-cost ASUS spin-off, and for years they carried a reputation as the budget alternative. That reputation doesn't really fit anymore. What made ASRock interesting was their willingness to experiment. Weird feature combinations, compact boards packed with storage, budget models with unexpectedly strong VRMs. They were often the brand trying things other companies ignored. Steel Legend became one of their most recognizable mainstream gaming series because it balanced decent hardware with prices that didn't immediately spiral out of control. Usually good enough VRMs, solid connectivity, reinforced slots, and cleaner aesthetics than older ASRock boards. Phantom Gaming targets gamers more directly, with more aggressive styling, faster networking options on higher-end models, and slightly heavier cooling. Taichi sits near the top as the enthusiast line, with premium power delivery, lots of M2 connectivity, stronger audio, and more overclocking-focused features. Aqua is their extreme showcase line, with integrated water cooling support and tiny production numbers that normal people almost never buy. Live Mixer became recognizable because of its creator-focused connectivity, lots of high-speed ports, and practical I/O for streaming, editing, and multi-device setups. ASRock's biggest strength is still value engineering. They regularly include things on mid-range boards that other brands reserve for much higher price tiers. More M2 slots, better lane layouts, more practical rear I/O. The trade-off is usually refinement rather than raw specs. BIOS layout and fan controls sometimes feel slightly less polished than ASUS or MSI. Some lower-end ASRock boards also cut back harder on onboard audio or rear USB connectivity to hit aggressive pricing. Sapphire. Most people know Sapphire from AMD graphics cards, so seeing them make motherboards still feels slightly unexpected. But their AM5 boards started attracting attention because they approach design differently from the usual extreme gamer aesthetic. The main lineup is fairly straightforward. Pulse boards focus on simpler mainstream builds with practical cooling and fewer cosmetic extras. Pure targets cleaner white-themed systems with lighter aesthetics. Nitro is the enthusiast line with stronger VRMs, heavier heatsinks, more premium connectivity, and one genuinely interesting feature, PhantomLink. PhantomLink basically routes GPU power directly through the motherboard on supported Sapphire GPUs instead of using visible PCIe power cables. The idea is cleaner cable management and a much tidier looking build. It's still niche and ecosystem dependent, but it's one of the more genuinely different motherboard ideas in recent years, instead of another RGB gimmick. The uncertainty comes from long-term ecosystem maturity. ASUS, MSI, and Gigabyte spent decades refining BIOS behavior, memory compatibility, and support infrastructure. Sapphire is still much newer in the motherboard space, so long-term platform support is harder to predict. Maxsun. Maxsun feels like a glimpse into an alternate universe where motherboard designers were told to stop acting serious. The iCraft series is the clearest example, and also their flagship lineup. Anime artwork, themed accessories, pastel accents, custom PCB colors. The whole thing is unapologetically built around coordinated aesthetic setups. Maxsun also makes anime-themed GPUs, which I covered in the GPU brands video. But underneath the styling, iCraft boards are surprisingly feature-packed for the price. Their Z890 iCraft models include a built-in 3.4-inch smart panel display that shows real-time telemetry like temperatures, voltages, and clock speeds directly on the board. You also get enthusiast features like BIOS flashback, clear CMOS buttons, and quick-release GPU mechanisms that make swapping oversized graphics cards much less annoying. And despite all that, these boards are often significantly cheaper than flagship ASUS or MSI alternatives with similar hardware. Outside iCraft, the lineup becomes much more conventional than people expect. Terminator is basically their main mid-range series. Stronger VRMs, more practical gaming-focused layouts, and unusually good storage support for the price. Some Terminator MATX boards manage to squeeze in 3 full-speed PCIe 4M2 slots, which is still uncommon in that size category. eSport sits between Challenger and Terminator, leaning more toward competitive gaming setups. Better onboard audio, cleaner networking optimization, and lower latency-focused tuning compared to their cheaper boards. Challenger handles the budget side with simpler cooling and fewer extras. Maxsun also leans heavily into the MATX form factor across most of their lineup. Instead of treating MATX like the cheap office PC option, they often build compact boards with features that normally get reserved for larger ATX models. The main compromise is still support infrastructure. BIOS localization, update frequency, documentation quality, and international RMA support generally aren't on the same level as the biggest global brands. The strange reality of motherboards in 2026 is that the gaming performance gap between brands became tiny. A solid CPU paired with a decent B650 motherboard from almost any major manufacturer will usually perform extremely close to boards costing twice as much. The expensive boards mainly make sense if you actually need the extras. Heavier VRMs for future CPU upgrades, more NVMe slots, better connectivity, stronger memory tuning, easier troubleshooting, or expansion flexibility for additional devices later. I actually covered that deeper in my motherboard features video. What motherboard brand are you running right now? Are you happy with it? Or did it give you any problems? Drop a like if this helped and subscribe for more clear hardware guides.